Hello Rebrand gang, and welcome to episode 37 of Rebrand Everything, the weekly graphic design show where I show you just a small part of the rebranding process, and that is the logo design. Today we're going to be rebranding the NYC TAXI's logo. And this idea wasn't submitted on the website. I actually saw a blog post the other day that was called the 35 most hated logos. I just thought, excellent, there's 35 more ideas to add to the list. So if this is one of the most hated logos, then let's get on with redesigning it. So when I was researching the NYC TAXI logo, I found this, and that popped up a lot, and that was the one that was in the actual blog post that said about it's the most hated logo in the world. This logo was actually used a few years prior to their current logo, which looks like this. So their latest logo removed the AXI, completing the word taxi, and that was the ugliest part of the design by far. The font and the letter spacing just looked horrible even when positioned next to this fairly inoffensive icon. Something that I noticed about that original logo was that the word taxi looked very plain and sort of unconsidered compared to the word NYC. And I thought that the NYC looked kind of like a logo, it could look kind of like it'd been developed. So then I looked a little bit further and Googled NYC logo, and sure enough, it is a logo specifically for NYC. So at this point, I'm thinking I should probably incorporate that into some of the options, as that's like the city's logo. So because there was a little bit of confusion about which is the current logo, I thought the best way to find out what they're currently using right now is get on Google Maps, drop the little man in on Street View, and have a look and try and find a taxi. And sure enough, this is the current logo that they're using. So the fact that they've dropped the AXI has cleaned up the logo, but there still feels like a disconnect between NYC and sort of the T icon. The NYC logo is very thick and uses these strong beveled corners, whereas the T has rounded corners, and the font that the T seems to use is very boring and just a little bit basic and just kind of like meh. The positioning of the NYC logo is okay, it's aligned with the top bar of the T. Even though I like the fact that it's aligned, the overall silhouette of the logo is a little bit sort of unbalanced and uncomfortable to my eyes. So today I'm going to try and come up with some new logo ideas, but I don't want to be too unrealistic with them. I want to make sure that anything I do could actually be implemented across taxis. So that's like, I'm not going to do like a full vehicle wrap, because obviously that would probably cost something like 20 times more than just the black sticker that they got on the side. So obviously doing something that involves a massive vehicle wrap is just not feasible and not realistic. Okay, so that's enough background and research. Let's get on with sketching out some ideas. So at the sketching stage, I was trying to just spill out everything that was in my mind that I've ever sort of thought about with taxis onto a page and sort of make something tangible. I think the key aspect of this is to make it very clear, because obviously NYC attracts a lot of tourists and not all of them are going to speak English. It needs to be very clear that it's a taxi, even though the fact that a yellow car in New York is pretty much guaranteed to be a taxi. I feel like it just needs to enhance that and help that, rather than make it confusing by looking like maybe an emergency services vehicle or something that isn't a taxi. I just want to, so the T is probably going to stay. Obviously the colours are going to stay the same, black and yellow, because that is just such a famous and iconic part of the NYC TAXI's brand. There is something else that is associated with taxis, and that is a white and black checker pattern, but I think that actually can work if it's just black and yellow as well. So that's another thing to think about, and I was thinking about at the sketching stage when I was drawing some of these options out. And something else that was on my mind is because the font for the word taxi, or the T inside the black circle on the most current logo, doesn't fit with the NYC logo very well, and the NYC logo is a lot more further on in the sort of development. It makes me think that one of the options I can go down is develop the word taxi to sort of sit with it, not so it looks like an extension of the logo, but so that it sits with it and looks comfortable with it, so that it doesn't just look like someone's typed the word taxi in Microsoft Word next to a logo that's been drawn out by a designer. Please don't forget to press like if you are enjoying the video so far. It really helps the channel out, and if you feel like you want to see videos like this every single week, press subscribe and then put the little bell on so you get a notification every Saturday when I upload. Cheers.
1.
So for my first option this week, I wanted to create something that really complemented the NYC logo. It seemed to make sense to do that, as the NYC logo is pretty distinctive and adaptable, and obviously it is the city's logo. It's like the main part of this whole branding. I didn't want to make the word taxi look too much like the logo because it might cause confusion, and also I think for anything more than NYC, that font that NYC is written out in is going to be very difficult to read and sort of confusing, especially if it's like tourists that don't speak English. So I needed to find a complementary font that had that sort of hard and edgy feel. I found this font and it's called Furor, and it has this hard edgy feel which I thought could work quite nicely. And then when positioned alongside the NYC logo, it has a contrast of thicknesses which is nice, but it also has these 45-degree angles which makes it feel like it's part of the family of the NYC logo. The T that I'd put inside the circle was starting to feel a little bit undeveloped now that I'd worked on the word mark beneath. So I added a stroke to this, and then I chose the bevel corners option, which is something I don't often go to, but I thought it worked perfectly for this, as it created an effect similar to the NYC logo.
2.
So for option 2, I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I thought it would be nice to use a hexagon instead of a circle, as I felt like the hard edges on that fitted with the NYC logo a little bit, if that also have that sort of shared straight edges on the corners. I know a lot of people in the comments always say that I just sort of resort to sans serif too quickly, so I wanted to make this option a little bit more interesting and try something different. So I decided to search for a nice like slab serif font to use within the hexagon. Once that letter was positioned in there, I thought it looked quite nice, it looked quite different, it had some sort of heritage about it that I've just thought might work. I tried rotating around the hexagon 90 degrees, which made it again feel quite different. I don't know whether I'm being sort of like over imaginative, but when I see a hexagon like this, it kind of reminds me of the silhouette of like a 3D isometric cube, which is quite cool, and also obviously could develop into the branding. I don't even know if they run adverts in the newspaper, but I can just see like, you know, an isometric style being brought in to fit in with the logo. The font I used for the word taxi was Clarendon Bold, which is kind of this big slab serif brutal font. I kerned that in quite tightly and filled in some of the gaps between letters. I didn't go full Zara, but I did want these fairly tight together, almost squeezed together, to give this strong distinctive look that also ties in with the tight letters in the NYC logo.
3.
So for option 3, my plan was to make this icon essentially as simple as possible and move the NYC icon to within the actual T shape itself. The main reason for this is that I didn't really like how it was positioned outside of the box on the current logo, and I thought it would be nice if they were sort of put together, and we obviously have this room inside the T that it just seemed to slot into nicely. And then again, to really tie it in with the NYC logo, I added a stroke to the T and used bevel corners option to give this effect. Obviously I did that in an earlier option as well, but what can I say, I'm a one-trick pony. But watch out if you do use it, because sometimes this effect goes a little bit weird on corners that aren't 90 degrees. I also added a big, super bold, super strong word mark next to this, with the thinking that if they want to drop that in the future they can, and the T on its own is still a great standalone icon.
4.
So for option 4, I wanted to focus less on the NYC logo that they're already using and more on some sort of classic taxi vibes. This yellow and black and white checker pattern is usually associated with taxis. I think it's normally a white and black check on a yellow car, but I think yellow and black works as well. It conjures up the same images in my mind. I tried a few ideas which were based on some of my sketches, and they looked okay, but they were a little bit boring and kind of like the first thing that pops into your head, and they just looked a little bit dull and sort of like if you just type taxi logo into a stock image website. So I thought I wanted to try something a little bit different and more bespoke. So I made a small and simple check pattern, and then I dragged that into the brushes palette and turned that into a brush, and then applied that to a circle, which I thought looked pretty cool and kind of ties in with their current logo, but while giving it sort of an extra little bit of taxi vibe. But then as I was developing this, I had another look at my sketchbook and saw that I'd drawn out these sort of marker pins, like location pins, and I thought, what if I combined them two ideas and took the marker pin and put the check stroke on it. It took a little bit of fiddling to get the bottom part of this right, and I'm not sure if the bottom V shape sort of fits really with the check pattern, but I didn't like it when the bottom of the actual point was yellow, so I kind of just landed on this. So even though the bottom of the icon might not be exactly perfect, I felt like the overall concept looked quite quirky, quite cool, quite memorable, and it kind of looks like a modernised version of a taxi logo.
5.
So for our final option this week, I wanted to go down a little bit of a different route. No capital letters, no big T in a circle, just a nice, clean, clear word mark set out in a friendly and bold font for maximum readability. I paid close attention to the kerning between every single letter just to make sure it all flowed nicely and there was no little jarring points where the text is too close together or too far apart. And then I reworked the dot on the top of the I, and then was developing the best way to put the NYC logo with this without it sort of taking over. So to ensure some good balance between the NYC logo and the word taxi, I made sure that the width of the logo matched the character thickness, so I just took the width of the I and made sure that was the same as the NYC, and that seemed to give it some sort of balance and some sort of like comfortable aesthetic. Then after trying a few different positions of how we could put this, I thought that the best way was this offbeat top left positioning, which I know some people might say is offbeat, just how the original logo that I was complaining about earlier is, but I think this works better as you're not trying to fight with that circle. And the other good thing about the NYC logo position was that it gave me something to align the dot of the I to as well, which is just another nice little tie-in and makes everything all feel integrated and considered. Okay then, Rebrand gang, just before I show you them final options, I just want to remind you to write in the comments below what you think of this video, what you think of the logos and what you would have done differently, and then press the little button up here to vote for your favourite. If you like this video, please remember to press like on it, it really helps the channel out, and you can also subscribe if you want. Okay then, Rebrand gang, let's see them final options.